So welcome, everybody. We are kicking off this podcast with the wonderful and talented Sandy Barry. She's smiling right now because she loves to be the center of attention. But I wanted to introduce her and just sort of talk to a lot of the agents out there about sort of the value of having sort of support staff when you're growing your real estate business and being able to provide, you know, better customer service for your clients, being able to sort of take some of your time back in order to either build your business or to be able to learn and grow personally. And so I wanted everybody to just get a better sense of like what Sandy has done for me and what her experience has been throughout this process of building what we have now, in the hopes that it can help better serve all of the agents and just give perhaps the general public a better understanding of what it's like to be involved in selling real estate, at least at high volume, the volume that we do.
There's so much more to it than people realize.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to take a minute to go through that. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So we started working together 5.5 years ago, and that was coming off of your job in it was marketing and PR, correct?
No, it was fundraising.
Fundraising. Well, that's marketing
there was
to
marketing.
a certain.
Yes, there was marketing involved. Fundraising for nonprofits.
Nice, nice. And what have you primarily been doing for me over the course of the last 5 years?
So the way that I always describe it is like anything from as soon as you get the listing, which we can go into the details, but everything from the beginning of the relationship to the accepted offer. That has always been my kind of space. And then the transaction manager would take over as soon as there's an accepted offer and go all the way to closing. So I guess it starts like when you get a phone call or get a lead or whatever, and you go out and meet with somebody. I will often prepare the packet for you and the listing presentation so that we can communicate with them ahead of time. But I kind of stay behind the scenes. And then once you sign up the client, and I can help with contracts, getting those ready. And then usually you'll introduce me to them, right? And we'll go over and do like a staging walkthrough, go through the whole house room by room, and I'll take notes on everything that is going to go into MLS. So what are the kind of lights, what kind of floors, where are the closets, stuff like that. And while you do like the numbers or whatever you do, I do the pretty things. And then I just kind of act as like a resource for the client throughout the listing process. And we'll all kind of collaborate on the listing description and, you know, tell me about what kind of special things you've done to the house while you've lived here. What do you really like about living here? Like, I just kind of have those conversations with them to craft the listing and shape it and kind of shape our marketing for it.
Yeah. So let's pause there. So I think what you can start to understand is just how much can be taken off of the agent's plate, you know, when you hire somebody and train them and get them competent in being able to provide, you know, customer service to your clients, right? Because as an individual agent, I think, you know, perhaps the general public just doesn't really understand, you know, what goes into listing and selling a house if you want to provide sort of exceptional customer service. So from the moment that you get introduced to them, you know, part of what I do is I have the ability to have a conversation, and I have a list of questions that will allow a client to understand sort of the options and what the process will look like, and provide the value that sort of I have developed over the years to allow people to understand the value of their home and the value of sort of getting their property ready. And then assuming that they are on board for that sort of process that we lay out and we're on the same page about price and terms, what I have understood is that if I step out of that role at that point and you step into the role of the sort of the main point of contact for that client, and I go back to finding other people to help service and or providing additional value to that specific client, that's where the client can receive the best experience. And so like you said, being able to send off a listing intake form to you that says prep the contracts, get the CMA ready for me to complete.
Put it in the database.
Put it in the database, set them up on calls, call this person or that person to get an answer on something that I need for them. And then being able to go back to them, do the CMA and then go out and interview. Then I interview, I come back and I just put a, pile of paperwork on your desk, and I can go back to creating business,
right, start again,
negotiating contracts, putting fires out, using the expertise that I have. So,
and they don't feel the loss because they've still got somebody.
Arguably, that's better at what specific task that they're doing, because I haven't written a MLS remarks in, and I know AI will probably take over that soon for most agents, but I haven't written remarks for a house. And that's probably one of the best parts about having you is not having to write. I mean, if you go back to before Sandy was with me and took a look at all of the listing remarks. Do you remember? It was like I used
always
one
nestled.
Things
were nestled in it.
A lot of things were nestled. Everything was wonderful. Wonderful home and beautiful. Wonderful, beautiful, and nestled were in every single listing remark that I had. Because again, that's sort of a creative thing to be able to sort of try to describe something in words to, sort of articulate the value of a property. I was never really good at that.
Right. And I'm like, is that gas? Is that oil? I don't know. So like you give me the details and then I can floof it up, make it pretty.
Right. And that was sort of, so when I was able to release that, because that not only took me a lot of time, but it took me a lot of mental energy to do. And so then I could spend that mental energy on something that was much more productive of my skill set and use of time. And you could step in and do all of those activities.
And
so
often there's a lot, sorry to interrupt, but just like the clients, if they want to like look at 2 lamps and send you all the pictures from Target, like you don't have time for that. But I do.
Yeah. Like my brain wants to explode.
I'm like, show me the one next to it.
Yeah. You're like, oh my
really
God, I might get that at my house.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that has happened.
And sort of sometimes if you're a really skilled technician at finding business and having conversations, a lot of the times what I found is that, agents will get, I don't want to use the word annoyed, but they will get annoyed with taking the time to slow down to the level that their clients are at, right? A lot of my clients will come into a house, we'll go into their house and they want to show you the linen closet and they want to, describe in detail how this light fixture is such an amazing light fixture and it was found in like the middle of some market in Europe and it was just,
like, tell me
more. And literally my mind goes blank with, why am I standing here listening to somebody's, coat closet story from, 20 years ago? So having a personality there that enjoys that increases the experience of that client, and being able to have somebody that comes in with an analytical brain and an ability to negotiate, but then having somebody that's there to make that personal connection and make that experience more enjoyable and fun. I don't find that fun, right? Walking through a property. So once I put a listing agreement on your plate, what does that look like from there for what you do for the client?
Anything that needs to be done ahead of time, like if they need to get their septic inspected, I can help arrange that. If they need an electrician or a plumber or something like that, any of the service providers, like that's one of the values that we like to provide, right? Is to just make sure we have a guy or a girl for everything. And whatever somebody needs, it's not one more thing they have to do. It's one more thing we have to help with, or we get to help with. So anything like that, helping them arrange handymen or movers or whatever it is, really just kind of like whatever they need is what I'm there to do and to help them with, and just letting them know that, and then staying in communication with them about like, here's the progress we're making. Here's what your listing looks like right now. I have a few questions about the age of the windows, whatever. And so then while that's all happening, I'm working in MLS and checking all the little check boxes to say what kind of floors there are and all of the notes that I took, or we're sending that to Nikki and Ami to help with. But from there, I do the actual, post it online, and there's a lot of figuring out everybody's schedules ahead of time and what are the hours going to be, and just kind of going back and forth. It's just a lot of coordination of details and making sure everybody's happy before we press play and it goes live and it's a real thing.
Yeah.
There.
And I would argue that from the time that, I'm not talking about like the time that it takes to find the business, right? The prospecting, the lead generation, all of that kind of stuff. But from the time that I connect with an agent till the time the property goes on the market, I would argue that you're doing, as far as the hours invested in getting it from that point, from the time that I first have the conversation to the time that the property is posted in MLS and then syndicated and all the marketing and everything else, I would argue that you probably do 75% of the hours from that point, right?
Yeah, all the behind the scenes.
Yeah. So I'm involved for 25%. You know, I might talk to the people to make final decisions on what they should do to get the house ready.
And it depends on the client too. Like the personality, sometimes people just prefer to deal with you and that's fine. And then you can just pass things off to me. But sometimes if they're open to just talking to me directly, it simplifies it for everybody.
Right. And then sometimes I'm surprised. I'm like, oh yeah, that one's going on the market today, right? and then
I'm like, call them, do this.
and then I can get right back into getting involved when I need to. But that frees up the time. And I think that it's an important, if you're a client, to understand, but also as an agent to understand that freeing up is not because it's not just to have me do less work. Right. It's that if I am spending mental energy on things that I am not genuinely interested in doing and or do not require the expertise that I have, right, then I'm spending my mental energy and time like devaluing what I could be doing for either other clients or that client, right? And so having somebody that comes in and has the ability to make that connection and do all of those things, do arguably 75% of the work to get it from, initial conversation to market is an invaluable resource for agents to have.
Definitely.
Do you think that if we did less volume, like let's say we did 30 transactions, do you think that you could do the listing management and the transaction management for like collectively?
I think so. Probably. We do way too much for that to be the case now, but I know Emily used to do that. Like before I was a thing, she did both the listing and the transactions, and there's probably something to be said for one person start to finish. That's kind of in that support role. But yeah, if it wasn't 70, 80 deals a year, I think one person could probably accomplish it and be really, really helpful.
Yeah. And I do look at that from an agent standpoint about the hours that a particular transaction, because arguably the same percentage of time from the time, so you handle or have handled from initial conversation to listing to under agreement. So basically you handle all pre-marketing, marketing, on market, and then weekly updates, showings, feedback, arranging, all of that kind of stuff. Now from the time we go on the market till the time that we go under contract, I step in. That's part of the 25% of the time that I'm involved. And perhaps that, depending on, the activity and whether it goes under agreement right away or not, and then how active it is, do we have 100 showings and 15 offers, which is just going to require a lot more of my time. But then I step in and I do 10 to 15 hours worth of work.
The
negotiations and dealing with showings and all that kind of stuff. But then once it goes under agreement, we have our transaction management team sort of take over. And from that point until the closing, again, that percentage of time is probably the support staff does 75% of the actual hours. I do 25%. Now the 25% is a much more skilled activity.
For sure.
But the vast majority over the course of from initial conversation to the actual closing table and beyond, I'm probably doing, what percentage would you say?
Of that?
Hours.
Yeah. I mean, probably the same.
It's probably somewhere around 30%.
So much of it is just coordinating people and making sure everyone's on the same page and staying in constant communication. It's not, like you say, it's not difficult. It's just complicated, and you have to stay on top of the deadlines because there could be very big ramifications if you miss them. So to have somebody that's their whole job is to meet those deadlines and make sure that's a huge asset for the clients and for the agent.
And from the agent standpoint, being able to, and I have effectively done this, I don't I was at a final walkthrough the other day because I met some clients, and we had Pedro, my great buyer's agent. He brought them out to a couple of houses, and they bought a house. I had not seen the house, and I had not met them yet. I had a Zoom call with them, and I had plenty of conversations. But they got to the closing table, or got to the final walkthrough right before the closing the night before. And I went out to the property simply because I'd never seen the property. I'd never met them. Yeah. And that's not all that uncommon with buyers, the way that we do things, because I can step in and do the sort of the valuable sort of expertise that I have in negotiating and doing all of that stuff.
Yeah, but you don't have to do everything.
But I don't have to do everything. And I'm not the best person to do everything. Like, you are exponentially.
That's a huge part of it is just recognizing that it's okay to get help and that sounds bad, but like, it's more helpful for everybody if you have somebody else on your team.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, if you look at the percentage of time that I'm actively involved, like, it is a small percentage. Mm-hmm. And if you put people in the position that they're a better fit to help them in that moment and with that activity, then the experience of the clients just go through the roof.
Mm-hmm. And thinking from their side too, like, it's not like you're not there. You're not just passing people off to us. Like, you're always here. You're always around, and you're absorbing everything that's happening. Like, you answer all the questions I have. You just don't have to deal with the nitty gritty.
Right.
But you're still aware and involved.
Right. But I also have the trust that I can back away from the process, knowing, okay, I've got the signed contracts done, and I know we're going to be hitting the market, 2 weeks from Tuesday. Mm-hmm. But I don't need to check in and make sure that the photography is scheduled and that the listing remarks are going off to the client and the marketing is being done. And again, by extension, after we go under agreement, I don't have to make sure that the staff is checking like every timeline and people are getting communicated with. Now, we have weekly updates to make sure that if something is missed, it's not an extended period of time before it's discovered. Mm-hmm. So we have we have systems in place to make sure that we're not missing anything, and that I do have a general idea of everything. But the reason that I brought up that, because I forgot why I started talking about the buyer that I'd never met, but I was sitting with the agent while the buyers were doing the walkthrough, and she was talking about like closing date and which attorneys and like a few of the problems that came up. And I was just sitting there and I smiled at her, and I know I've known her for a while. And she goes, "What?" And I go, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And she was like, I'm so jealous that you don't know any of this. And I was like, it's just not like it was taken care of. If it had become a bigger issue, then I would have gotten involved. But it was, again, being able to release that mental energy that would keep me involved in the deal prevents me from having the energy to go out and develop new business or, provide the time for somebody that actually needs it. Because when my clients need my time, like I give it, it has to be me. Mm-hmm. If I need to put a fire out, something that materially might sort of drastically affect whether somebody moves, whether an experience happens, whether somebody's going to get sued, whether like a fire happens, like I have to have the time to dedicate to that. If it's a half a day, when we have 25 pendings, I have to be able to have that half a day. And you and Nami and Nikki and Emily at one point, Kristen, Lauren, like all of the team allows me to have that time to be able to give to clients when they really need it.
Absolutely.
So sometimes when things go extraordinarily smooth, clients may sit back at the end of the day and go, "Ben was really only involved for like 5-6 hours of this whole thing."
That means you won.
but that's the experience went extraordinarily smooth, and that's just what happens. But if something did come up, that's where I have the free time to do it. So
that makes all the difference.
Yeah. So I think it's really important for people to understand, or agents to understand, the value of time and having somebody in a position to help. And
what do you always say? Who, not how?
Yes. Yep.
Like make sure you are thinking about who can do this instead of you.
Yeah. It's a great book. I forget who wrote the book, but if you look for it, it's literally called Who Not How. But instead of figuring out like how to solve a problem, figure out who can help you solve the problem or who can solve the problem for you. Because if you can eliminate that activity from what you do, especially if you do that 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 times a year,
Right.
you can start to free up your time to be able to create something either bigger or provide more customer service to your clients.
And that's a whole mindset shift. But once you get there, you can't go back.
Right. And that was something that was really hard. And you've been here for sort of 5.5 years, and you've been a part of most of the transition from us being very much get in, get out, and be done versus what we do now, which is we really just try to provide like overwhelming customer
Get in there,
service,
be part of the family.
right? and I think I think that's where, you know, the mindset shift had to happen to have that be the expectation every single time versus just we're going to come in, we're going to do our job and sell your home. And that's where we started having raving fans. That's why we started having people just refer business all the time because their experience was so drastically different than
Run of the mill.
the run of the mill or what they've experienced in the past or what they've heard about as far as real estate agents. Now, I know that, you know, you're starting to have a little bit more support, especially now that we have the team. So we have 2 virtual assistants. Talk a little bit about what they do at this point.
So they're, to me, what I was to you several years ago now. Like, I can hand things to them. Like, we've got lots of procedures in place, standard operating procedures that they've created. I will go on Zoom and teach them how to do something, have them walk through it with me. I do it once, record it, and then they can do it from there. And it's life-changing. So, and they're always around if you need them. I just have like a little Google chat up, and they are so capable and so talented that I keep finding more and more things that they can do. Like it depends on finding the right person, but we've been extraordinarily lucky that these 2 are just so capable and take whatever I give them and run with it. So they can do a lot of the contract, you know, just building templates, stuff like that. A lot of the database work, putting people in, making sure their follow-up calls are happening, things like that, which then in turn frees me up to do whatever you need me to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And I think it's interesting too. And what comes up for me when you say it's, you know, we've been very lucky. What I think is perhaps a good little segue into sort of the value that you see in your support staff and what you compensate them. Because we talk a lot about, you know, it's going to be hard to find A+ talent if the opportunity isn't there for that, you know, that person. We pay almost 3 times what the normal rate for a VA is. And arguably, you know, I pay most people 2 to 3 times what the average salary for the position is. And when that happens, you attract the right sort of people.
And they stay motivated.
And they'll do whatever it is that you need. And especially when you're talking about a VA who most VAs will earn between $3 and $4 an hour. Like that's a big difference to be able to pay somebody the value where they're super motivated and enthusiastic to come to work every day.
Right.
And if the environment matches the compensation, then that's just icing on the cake.
The appreciation, because I always like make it a point, I think we all do, to thank them for what they're doing. And, you know, like, oh, you did a really good job, and just like constant feedback and positive reinforcement. And I think that's not something that you get everywhere. And like on several occasions I've heard like, you guys treat us like real people, which is not always the case. And that they deserve it. They're people too, you know, like they're part of our family too. We want everybody to feel the same level of taken care of. Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake that I made very early on in my career, was that I tried to lower the cost of an assistant. And I thought, hey, I can groom somebody into being an amazing sort of assistant or listing coordinator or transaction coordinator. If I get them at this, you know, salary, I can then coach them into it. The problem is that even when I interviewed, you know, I wouldn't get the talent that I was looking for because I wasn't willing to provide the value that they needed to partner. And you were sort of the first one that I sat back and I met, and I was like, all right, well, I think I might have even asked you at the point, like, what is your expectation on salary? Because it was like a wide range depending on experience that I had. And I asked you, and you told me sort of the absolute top end of what or even it might have
I told you way more than that.
I think it was over that. And I was like, oh crap. I thought at the end of the interview, at the end of the interview, I was like, oh man, I don't think this is gonna, like, I can't. And then I just started to understand that if I was going to have certain expectations and grow the business to a certain level, I needed to have really, really good people. And I think you were perhaps the first one. And it's not that, my sister and Emily, who worked for me before, but that was born out of a different situation. Like she was a stay-at-home mom. She helped me sort of part-time and then developed into more than that over time. But this is the first time that it was like a sit-down
not
interview.
Family.
Yeah, not family. See the value, and understand how that could like materially help. And it's just, I'm so glad that you decided at that time and that
it was a leap of faith on both of our parts.
Wasn't it? And then to see where we've gone over the past couple of years. And so, yeah, really excited about sort of the new direction because now we have the support staff that's there. And, also we added Lauren recently, which is our media manager, and that has taken a certain amount of tasks off of your plate.
Amazing.
Because I think, you talk about, all right, you have been historically our listing coordinator, and that's been your primary.
Talk about any of the marketing.
Right. You doing all of that stuff, right? But then I pushed on social media and then, put that on your plate. And I started doing events and then I put that on your plate. And then...
And like our community involvement and sponsorships and events like that, town events.
Pretty much everything that annoys me, I just go.
All the creative stuff.
I'm like, Sandy, can you please do this? You're like, yeah, that sounds great.
It's my happy place.
This is great. So I think that's also, that speaks volumes too, is your willingness to jump in and help out. So I had hired you to do like a specific role and job. And I think for a while, that's probably what you did. But then even when we started looking for new office space and developing and sort of coming in, that's when we started to expand what you did for us. And now it's, virtually everything under the sun.
It's all other duties as assigned.
Yeah. But that's also your development too. And when we talk about, the trajectory of your career and what we're trying to build here, I want to build the environment that allows you to sort of grow as big as you want within the organization. And also push you to develop into sort of the best version of you, both, your career and then just you as an individual. And so that's a lot of what we're doing. So talk a little bit about sort of at this point, what are you moving into? Like, what is your,
great question.
Can you define that yet?
I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
Like you said before, and I remember this being part of like the job description and the ad that I applied to was just like, whatever activities are needed to free up the time of the lead agent. And so that's still the case. It's just that those activities are very different now as we've expanded with EXP into agent attraction and getting more people to partner with us. There's a lot more of that, the events and just outreach to other agents and trying to come up with value that we can provide outside of here to bring people into the orbit. And that's really fun and exciting for me. So I love, it's kind of funny, like I'm going all the way back to my original roots of event planning. But at the same time, like it's completely different because it has this whole business spin to it and the possibilities are endless.
So what comes up for me when you say that is that we as real estate agents, if you go out there and you're doing 20, 30, 40 transactions and you're making good money and you hire an assistant and then you do the same exact thing for 20 years, it's not the opportunity for the people that you hire is going to remain very, very low. And that's why we see a lot of, assistants turn to real estate.
They hit the ceiling.
Right. They hit the ceiling of what they can accomplish and they understand that this agent's going to do $300,000 or $400,000 worth of business every single year. And there's only a certain amount of money that can be allocated towards that support staff. And so it caps that ceiling at what, somebody could do. And unless that agent is willing to continue to grow the organization, if you have somebody that's really, really good in your support team or in your staff, that person, if they're really motivated, is going to outgrow the opportunities that you can provide. And so,
yeah. And it's been the opposite of that here, where you are continuing to give me opportunities to have people now that I can delegate things to so that I can do more of the management and making sure, like, now we went from just us in the office, like 2 of us and sometimes Kristen, to now we have a full room a lot of the time. And we have that, with that comes a lot more, the little things, making sure we have enough coffee ordered and stuff like that, but also making sure everybody has the same templates in their, in their different programs that we have, and just making sure everybody's kind of doing the same thing and putting out the same product so that the clients are happy.
Well, I think we had a conversation maybe a year ago, and I think I sat down with you and I was like, what do you want? And I think I remember you saying that was the sort of the first time.
Yeah, no one ever asked me that before.
No one ever asked you, right?
Yeah.
And I
don't know what I want. Tell me what I want.
What should I want?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool that, because what I've been able to learn from other agents and individuals, coaches and mentors, is really to start reflecting on what you actually want, because so many times we can go years, 5 years, 10 years, 15
just
years
on autopilot
and not really realize what's going on and whether or not you're moving towards this goal that you want,
or even having goals,
like you said. So I think it's really interesting to watch sort of what has become important for you and like what motivates you. And, that's what I'm doing now is sort of putting a lot more on your plate. And that's something that you're really excited about.
Yeah. More like the long-term projects and figuring out the mechanics of like how to make everything be as efficient as possible while still being fun.
Yeah. And is that uncomfortable?
A little. Yeah. Because I am very much like a list person that needs to just like check things off and write it down and check it off. But it's different. It's good uncomfortable. I'm learning.
Yeah. Well, and you said the other day, because again, we hired another virtual assistant to sort of help with the listing management activities, all the stuff that you do, so that you can have time, especially with the extra team, you need to almost manage the listing manager. It's not that you stepping out of that role fully, but that you can't dedicate as much time to it. And you started to get out, and you started to say to me the other day, you're like, this is a lot more fun than just doing the same thing over and over again. Right. And I think that if those opportunities aren't there, and I'm speaking directly to real estate agents right now, but if you're not willing to grow and expand your organization to provide adequate opportunities, that's where a lot of support staff will then get into real estate. Because they see the opportunity, they see it firsthand. And especially if that agent is successful when that support staff comes in, and then they see the work that they're doing commensurate to what they're making, they go, oh, well, I want to do that. And then they look at that opportunity. So again, being able to grow and provide that to your support staff, as much as you want to grow, they want to grow too. And if you don't want to grow, that doesn't mean that they don't want to grow either.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So it's really
I didn't even know I wanted to grow, but here we are.
It's awesome.
Let's go. Let's grow.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's going to be a really fun year. I keep telling folks that, that this next couple of years in real estate, especially as we grow the organization and we start partnering with people, this is going to be the fun part. We're going to be looking back once we've accomplished everything that we want to accomplish. And we're going to go, that was a crazy couple of years. But it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And absolutely. I think for those of you so Sandy is an expert at sort of running a real estate organization, and sort of understanding all of the different components that are there. And that's one of the things that we're offering with partnership at EXP is sort of access and proximity to you.
Right. Like I spent 45 minutes on the phone yesterday with somebody who just needed help figuring out SkySlope and the systems for our compliance. Like, I can have the time now, because I'm doing less of the listing stuff, to just like stop and help whoever needs help.
Right.
So it's like putting things out there to preempt the questions, but then I'm also get to be here for the questions too, and just kind of like walk right alongside with people and figure things out.
Right. And I think the big thing that you're going to be working on over the course of the next 6 to 12 to 18 months is really evaluating from an agent standpoint, like what support do they need when they partner with EXP, or just even real estate agents who are in proximity to us, but not partners with us. Like, what do agents actually need? And I think that you're in a unique position where you can identify those things because you see them from like supporting me. And now that we sort of have 3 full-time agents that are working as well, you can sort of start to see, and you understand better than most, where those roadblocks are that are going to prevent people from continuing to grow.
Yep. And a lot of them can just be easy fixes. Things that we can, put one more system in place and all of a sudden you have so much more time.
Right.
So yeah, it's fun to kind of help people realize those things.
And even understanding the virtual assistants and, the support staff that perhaps is exponentially less expensive. They aren't you, but they are an option that will allow people to help have support at a much lower cost, perhaps earlier in their career. That will give them more time back so that they can invest that time into building their business.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see over the course of the next 12 to 18 months what sort of programs and content we can create to help those agents that have both partnered with us and that haven't, to just help them get better at what they do. Because we want to, in my opinion, we want to help motivated and enthusiastic agents. The ones... people. Right. The ones that aren't, like, those are the, sorry guys, but those are the people we want out of the business.
Yep. They could be. They tried.
Well, but that's the point, is that if you've got motivation and you're enthusiastic and you're hardworking, you can succeed in this business. You can succeed a lot faster if you have a blueprint and you're in proximity to really good people. But the more that we can help those motivated and enthusiastic agents produce at a higher level, the more it's going to have them take their unfair share. And the people who aren't serious about this business are going to get less and less. And honestly, that's what this industry needs. We need more people that actually do the job well and less people that just do it on the side or don't really know what they're doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think probably the idea of partnering is scary for some because it just feels like a whole big thing, a brokerage switch. And what do? I have to learn all new stuff. And like, that's exactly what I'm here for, to help everybody hit the ground running. And because we've done all the things already, we've made the mistakes, like we can just point you in the right direction. So you don't have to waste all that time at the beginning. It's just like a seamless switch and you're off and running.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've done seamless switches every time we've moved brokerages, right? Just like nice and smooth and like it wasn't any effort at all, right? Like it was just switch the name on the business cards and get to work.
Yep. Not hard to switch the databases out or any of those things.
Well, I think what's funny is that, that I was the recipient of the ease of this brokerage switches.
Was it easy for you?
Yeah, it was easier for me than it was for you.
It was more expensive for you, though.
Yes. Well, I mean, again, that's part of like, I understand that we're going to get involved in a certain number of things that are just going to go in the wrong direction. And I think you've been the patience to deal with me having us go in a particular direction for months in a row and then coming to you at one point and going, I'm really sorry that you put 3 months into going in this direction, but I am very much recognizing that it's not either working or it's not what I thought, or it just isn't the direction that we need to head anymore. And then literally looking at 3 months of work, not for nothing because it allowed us to make that decision, but it does to a certain extent. It feels like, oh my God, what the did I just do for months in a row?
Yeah, but it like what a good experience to be able to cut the cord and just like cut your losses and keep going instead of sticking it out just because you feel like you have to for a year. And then like, just if you know you're going to do it all over again, what's the point?
Right.
I like the you are able to recognize that at the point that you are. When we get down the road too far on something and it's not right, like that's it, we're done.
Right.
And I like that about you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I think that that's one of those things that I didn't even really recognize that I did really until Aaron's podcast that I did a couple of years ago, even right after COVID, because I think he labeled the podcast like pivoting. And we started to go through all of the things that I've changed and moved around and redirected over time, even back to like getting my real estate license when I was 18 and going to college and then getting out of college and getting a job and then getting promoted and then leaving that. You know, I left a really good salaried position with benefits for the unknown of sales in 2006, and then going into REO and then getting out of REO and then starting a team. And I think I never gave myself enough credit for the ability to sort of make difficult decisions. And maybe there was a certain amount of, what is it? Naivete. Yeah. It never sounds right to me.
It's fancy because it has an accent.
Does it want to have one of those, like one of those Spanish little signals, or is that like French? The French and the Spanish do a lot of that stuff, huh? But I think that that's important, right? Being able to evaluate in the moment that you're in what's working and what's not.
Yeah, because so many people will just stay comfortable and just be like, well, I guess it's supposed to be miserable and we'll just keep doing it because that's what you do.
Right. I almost think when you look at it, the agent who's making like between $150,000 and $250,000 is probably the hardest real estate job out there. The folks that are making less, you know, they perhaps don't know any better, and they're making more money than if they were working sort of a full-time job in an office.
Yeah. But
they get certain periods of time where there's enough downtime. Now, mentally, I'm not sure that that's a great place for them. But then the actual work of somebody that's doing $150,000 to $250,000, if they're solo agent, it's nonstop.
It's every night till midnight, all of that. And that's definitely something that I knew I didn't ever want to do.
No.
Just talking about like, would I want to be an agent, to watch how that can just like take over your entire life. And it's great money for sure, but at what cost?
Right. And especially when there's other, again, if I was working 20 hours a week and just raking in, you know, a couple $100,000 and you were in the office all the time by yourself. I mean, you've never really worked in the office by yourself either. I'm an office person, so I'm always here with you too.
Which is great.
But that would be really tough for folks to understand.
It would be easy to get probably like resentful of that.
Yeah.
But that's never been the case.
Yeah.
You're always working.
I'm always.
Always.
Hopefully.
At least you don't have the bat anymore. I used to swing the bat over my head. Not at me, but.
Were you worried that it was going to slip out of?
I had a little, we sat back to back in the office, and you would walk around on your phone calls with the bat, and I had a little like rear view mirror on my monitor.
You put the rear view mirror on.
It was like up there.
Yeah. And to be fair, it was a wiffle ball bat. It wasn't like an MLB slugger bat.
Wiffle ball bats can still hurt.
Yeah. I used to do, but again, that was sort of occupying my ADHD brain, you know, while I was making those calls, so that I didn't get distracted with other things in the middle of the calls.
Yep. I very much didn't want to be something to distract. So that's why I had my little
that was way back. That was Remax. That was in the corner office of Remax. Gosh, that seems like a lifetime ago.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole different iteration of us.
Right. Just going back to that time period, Emily was working out of, where was she at the time?
She was in Virginia.
Virginia at that point. Yeah.
I just would be on Slack all day long.
Right.
I'd be like, when do I get to talk to him?
Yeah.
She's like, don't bother him.
not until 12. Yeah.
I just keep my little post-it of things to say and then be like, raise my hand.
Well, I remember I told you, because you used to sit by the office door. So the office had 3 desks in it and we had all of them. But I used to say, like, one of your jobs is to stop people from coming into the office while I'm making calls. So you'd see somebody walking down the call and you'd just put up your hand.
Yeah, I took that very seriously.
Yeah. Well, and that was always something that I was so grateful for, the location of my office, because it was down the end of a long hallway.
People had to come on purpose.
Purpose, so they couldn't just saunter by and waste our time. But you know, people understood after a little while.
Just door shut, leave it alone.
Leave it alone. Yeah, otherwise they're going to get yelled at. But yeah, I don't have anything. So what else do you think? Is there anything else that you can think of that might be valuable for agents to hear, like from an assistant standpoint, from operations, from customer service? Like, is there anything else that you can think of that might be valuable for folks to hear?
I think you've said it. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to find somebody that you trust to help you do things. You don't have to do it all by yourself. I think that's a really hard lesson for any kind of entrepreneur to learn and swallow that pill, like, okay, like I can give some of this up. Like I even have a hard time delegating things myself, and because I'm usually the one that gets delegated too. So I think it's okay to do that, and doesn't have to be as scary as you think.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and I think that's something that as agents we have to just reflect on what we're doing and whether or not we're sort of taking every penny that we can out of our business as profit, or whether there are people in position, because actually, and it pops up another thought of, you have a certain personality. It's funny because we get along so well, but we are like in certain aspects, we are diametrically different on sort of like what we do with our spare time, what we believe in politically. We're on polar opposite sides of the spectrum, but there's a certain amount of respect, which has been amazing to have. But the reason that I bring that up is because I do think that certain clients will get more value from one of us, and or the value that we provide collectively with our different personalities. Like you're a lot warmer. I am much more like sort of technical, and
you're the analytical one.
Right.
I'm like, oh, how can I hold your hand?
Yeah. How can I make this pretty? Yeah.
Yes.
How can I create an environment where people are,
but it's almost like good cop, bad cop. Like we complement each other. And then the way when people will often like talk to the clients and say, if you feel bad bothering Ben, or like you don't want to bug him with something, like come to me. That's what I'm here for. And I feel like that gives them options.
Yeah. But I think and the experience that they have having multiple different personalities and people to check in with them. And, you're not only, so if you look at the structure of our organization right now, we have, if I go out and list a property, I'm likely taking one of the agents on our team. So you get 2 agents, you get you as sort of operations management, you get Nikki and Nami for support on transaction and listing management. And then you get Lauren with, media and photography. And so if you look at it, for an agent in our market to compete with the value that we bring, I mean, realistically, the only thing that they could possibly make a case for is that, listen, I'll handle all of it. But
like, do you want a stressed out, stretched out agent who doesn't have time? No.
And that's what I think, again, honestly, if I had enough time to individually do every step of the process, I don't think that that's a better customer experience than what they get from everybody on this team. Because we have
a variety of personalities and people.
And we have people that specialize in individual aspects of the job. I can't do transaction management better than Nikki can. I can't do photography and media better than Lauren can. I can't operate and remember and do all of the activities that you do to make the customer experience that much better like you do.
And I couldn't go out and sell anybody on a CMA or make any of those calls. I'd just be like, I don't know, what do you want to list the house for? You tell me. We'll do whatever you want.
1.2 million? Sure. Raised ranches sell all the time for 1.2 million. But that's the whole, that is sort of what we've developed over time, and what we feel like we've always made decisions that are in the best interest of the client. And if you're an agent right now and you're sitting back and evaluating a decision on whether to hire an assistant or whether to get support staff or do all of that kind of stuff, really sit back and ask the question of yourself, is this in the long term, once they're up and running? Because I do understand that there's going to be a period of time where it's going to be probably worse than before it gets better. Right. But once everything is up and running, is the experience of your client, is it better with the support staff and with the people that you're putting in place, or is it worse? And to be honest with you, if you answer that question and it's worse, then you just don't have the right people in place.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah. It's all about finding the right people. Anybody can be trained in lots of like the technical things like that, but the right people who understand kind of like the mission behind what we're doing and how we're trying to make it all client centric and give people an experience rather than just like a transaction. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah. And I think that goes when you're evaluating who to hire and how much to pay them and all of that kind of stuff. I heard this said one time and it really resonated, that you can't expect A+ talent if you're not providing an A+ opportunity. So if you want to pay somebody $40,000 to come into the office every day and deal with real estate bullshit while you make 200 grand, 300 grand a year and work 30 hours a week, that dynamic's just never going to work.
Certainly not sustainable.
It's not. And you're not going to get a personality. You're not going to get a wonderful person like you are to come and to stay and to put their life energy, because you are every day that you show up at work, you're making a decision to trade your time for the money and the experience. And if the money and the experience aren't commiserate with the life energy that you're giving out, then you're going to eventually move on.
And that was all I knew work-wise until this job. It like that was the extent of everything. I was so burned out and so just like not in the right place. And I just kind of thought that was what work was. And you do that and then you get to go home and have your real life. And it's such a complete 180 here that like, it is fun to come here. I love coming to the office, and I haven't had the Sunday scaries in 5.5 years because it is such a different experience. And like, it's nice to know that that exists out there, because I certainly did not know that prior to this place.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome to hear, because that is what I never put a whole lot of stock or value in that. You know, when I was building the business, it was very much, I am trading my time for money. And fortunately, I found a profession that the money in return justified, in my opinion, at that time, it justified the work that I was doing, you know, and I enjoyed it to the standpoint that I felt like I was being compensated commensurate to what I was providing. But the experience that we now have, especially over the past 3 or 4 years, since we sort of started to make really intentional decisions about what we were doing and partnering with good people and providing better opportunities for agents and, you know, creating an office space like this, which you had such a intricate role in developing, you know, now that we have that really is true. Like, I'm not concerned about working. Like, I'm not bummed to come to work. I'm not sort of fighting it. But that's because we're being very intentional about what we're doing and the direction that we're moving and being able to provide value to other people. And so I think that there's a lot that, you know, agents can learn from you. And what we're going to do is we're going to just continue to work with, you know, being able to produce some content and some value. And we'll come up with some ideas on sort of what education that you can provide to agents about hiring, you know, assistants or training assistants, or like the value of an assistant that an assistant can provide. Because I think that that's a really big hurdle for successful agents to overcome. But if you can take that next step, hire that person, it opens up a world of possibilities.
Absolutely.
And then you just have to make the decision that you want to commit to continuing to grow and or just produce the environment that makes it worthwhile for everybody to stay right where they are.
And then you get stuck with somebody like me forever.
God willing. God willing. But all right, I think we're coming to our time. So I appreciate everybody sort of joining us again. If you have any questions specifically, drop them in the comments. If you're watching them on one of our channels, drop the questions in the comments. We can certainly get answers for you or connect you directly with Sandy if you're curious about sort of hiring, the process of what it's like to support a top producing real estate agent. You know, we'll be coming out with some more content and some tips and stuff that agents and assistants can do. But even if you're an assistant watching this and you're curious about sort of the environment, feel free to reach out to us. Yep. Call Sandy and we'll look forward to having you guys join us next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. See you guys.